In this video, I'm going to go over my updated Blood Mage freeze build. At endgame, you're going to be able to clear anywhere from tier 6 to tier 8. Now, this build is not fully complete. It's only going to get better. We need more crit chance and so on. As you will see, we're going to go over everything. I'm going to break down all the details, all the changes. And speaking of changes, the build when it comes to rare enemies and bossing became better. And you will see why here in a minute. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to be updating this build with time. I'm going to try to perfect it as much as possible. I'm also going to be uploading some builds for other classes as well. So if you guys enjoy this one, and only if you do, slap a like, sub to the channel. The first thing you need to know is that this is going to be a very spirit heavy build. Currently, I'm sitting at 293. I'm going to be trying to get more and more. And if you don't have enough spirit, I'm going to show you what you can kind of postpone. And as you get more spirit, just slap it on later. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the skill gems. There's a lot of changes that I've made here because of the changes that the devs have made, right? So this time around, we're going to be utilizing a few different sources for us to be able to cast Comet. That is very important. Now, one of the main ones is going to be cast on critical. And this is where I think that the build actually became better when it comes to bossing and killing rare enemies. Because what they essentially did is they made the comets harder to spawn on normal enemies, but made the build up easier when it comes to bosses and rares, for example, right? So it kind of depends on the rank of the monster. Now, cast on critical is actually perfect for our build because Blood Mage is a class that is built around critical chance. Your blood orbs spawn off of them, you pick those up, you heal, you overflow your HP to double. On top of that, it is tied to critical hit damage as you move on through your ascension as well. So cast on critical is going to be great. When you fight bosses, you'll see that you're going to be casting comets very frequently and you're simply going to be deleting them. We're going to use Comet, combine it with considered casting, spell echo, and then impetus. Then we also have cast on freeze. This is going to be there more so for the clearing. As we clear, freeze the normal enemies, they're rare enemies. Comets are going to build up, they're going to fly in, destroy everything. We're going to combine the comet here with unleash, then cold mastery and energy retention. Then we have frostbolt. This is going to be our main clearing skill in combination with frostball, but the support gems are going to be inspiration, then arcane tempo, scattershot, and glaciation. Now you need inspiration so that you don't drain your mana a lot with frostbolt, and this way you're going to be able to pretty much spam it as much as you want because your mana regen is going to be enough to sustain it. And if you still have a problem with it, you can always use the flask. Next is frost wall. This is a very good skill both for survivability and for damage. So just building these walls, and I will show you guys the rotation that I use for clearing normals, rares, and bosses as well. But in general, this is great for survivability, and the shattering just does so much damage. Support gems are going to be spell cascade, icicle, and then concentrated effect. Next up is the frost bomb, which is going to be our debuff. We are going to be combining it with hypothermia as well. But first, let's take a look at frost bomb here. We're going to be using strip away, cold penetration, and magnified effect. On hypothermia, which is our curse, we're going to be rocking cursed ground, heightened curse, and then expense. So for boss fights or rare fights, what I like to do is drop hypothermia. Keep in mind, this takes a lot of mana off of you. So that is something you need to know. So that's why I don't use it against normal enemies. If there's a group of rares or bosses, that's when I drop it. Then I go straight into frost bomb. Then I drop some walls on the enemies, spam a little bit of frostbolt, and then you'll see that comets are going to start flying in. And the next on the list, guys, is the normal comet. I do have this ready to go, but honestly, I don't use it as much because I don't really need to half of the time. And if you keep spamming this, this will also affect your mana. So you don't necessarily need this. I just have this here in case I do. Now let's take a look at elemental invocation, because this is something that will give us the ability to do burst damage. Essentially, when you put this on, what happens is you're going to build up elemental, and with time you will see stacks build up on the skill. Currently, I can build up to 3. So when I have a group of rares or a boss, I have it on demand, right? Like as I'm playing through the game, destroying enemies, this builds up. I have 3 comments ready to go. When I see there's a bunch of rares, boom, I absolutely slap them with it, and it's just doing tons of damage. So we're going to be running Comet on this, Capacitor, and Minion Pact. Now, the reason I'm using Minion Pact is because the Scepter, as you will see here in a minute, that I'm stuck with kind of at the moment, has the warrior minions on it. So might as well try to take advantage of that. And it's actually pretty good. So for now, it works. Then we have Arctic Armor with Clarity for mana regeneration and Cannibalism for better survivability. Those are the gems. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. I always try to answer as many comments as possible. So if you're struggling with Spirit, go for Cast on Freeze and Cast on Critical first. And then as you get more, you can add the Elemental Invocation and Arctic Armor as well. For the Life Remnants, I just don't have enough Spirit right now to do anything here. Hopefully I fix that very, very soon. And now let's talk about the skill points, because this is where it gets very interesting. For the Ascendancy, these are going to be the nodes that we're going to pick up. The long-term goal is to go all the way to Sunder the Flash and get that 15% base critical hit chance for spells. This is going to be huge for this overall build. And guys, always remember to go for the Blood Orbs, especially if you're fighting bosses. With this build, you're going to be landing a lot of crits, which means you're going to be spawning them a lot. Those orbs are going to keep you alive. At the beginning here, you're going to pick up these middle nodes as well for some increased mana regeneration, increased cast speed, and so on. What I like to do is follow these nodes. Then we're going to make our way all the way up here. And the first thing I want to show you is what's happening on the left side. Please remember, we're trying to build in to crit as much as possible. So we're going to make our way over here, and you're going to get a total of around 75% increased crit chance. We do lose some mana, but for me personally, it's been worth it because I'm spawning way more orbs on bosses and rares as well, which means that, you know, that gives me more survivability and more damage also in the long run. On this side, we're going to pick up some increased spell damage nodes. Then up top, we're going to focus more on critical hit chance once again. And we're going to go for overexposure. This is essentially a direct buff to your cold damage. So I would advise to pick these up. And speaking of cold damage, we're going to get more increased freeze buildup and duration with these nodes. We have controlling magic on the way as well. And right here, this area, guys, is where it gets very interesting. So you will need this skill Shattered Crystal. And the reason for that is when you combine that with the support gem that we have on the Frost Wall, which is Icicle, this means that you're going to be able to destroy these walls much faster, much easier, which means more damage faster and better clearing and better damage on rares and bosses as well. So you can't really go wrong with that one. The next node is Energize. This is also going to be something you want to pick up in order to build up your cast on skills faster. 25% chance for triggered skills to refund half of energy spent, which is huge. We're going to be using a lot of those, so that will come in handy for sure. On the bottom here, you're going to go for Careful Assassin. This reduces our critical damage bonus by 20%, but increases our critical hit chance by 50%. And that is huge for the Blood Mage. We need that crit chance to be as high as possible. So for example, on the Frost Bomb, currently we're at 49.5%. Then on the Frostbolt, we are at 45, almost 46% crit chance. And I'm going to try to get this as high as possible just to make the build feel better overall. Then we have some more increased freeze buildup, increased in cast speed, some good stuff. And currently I'm working on this node right here for direct increase in crit chance. And once we get the Ascension right, by the way, and once we make our way to Sunder the Flash, we will get a base critical hit chance for spells. And while I do think that the class needs a buff, I still have been having an amazing time playing this setup, picking up the orbs, overflowing my HP, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's really been a great time. So yeah, that is it for the skill tree. And now let's go into the gear, okay? Gear is something that, you know, I don't have like the best of the best gear, but currently it does feel like this is enough. Let's start off with the wand, and shout out to Nico. He was the one that gave me this wand. We have 20% increased spell damage on this one. And this is where, for the next one that I get, I'm going to focus on getting this as high as possible because this damage can be much better, right? On top of that, we don't have critical hit chance. That is the biggest thing that I'm kind of looking for when it comes to this build. Now I'm just going to hover over some of the other items and you guys can take a look. But yeah, the main thing you want to go for here is resistances, HP, that kind of stuff on your gear for more survivability. And do not, and I mean do not, skip over getting resistances on your gear. We're going to take a look at that, on those stats here in a second, because the resistances are extremely important as you're pushing the higher tiers. It's going to make a night and day difference. Trust me on that. And you want to have pretty high resistances if you're trying to push end game. So yeah, this is the kind of gear that we're rocking right now. tiers, the flasks. The mana flask has actually been very helpful because we do have 23% chance to gain a charge when you kill an enemy. That's kind of huge. And let's take a look at the resistances. At 4 fire, 49%, cold 66, lightning 60. I'm gonna try to get this 70 plus. This build currently works, as I said, from anywhere to tier 6 to tier 8. It's fun. You have survivability. The damage is very nice, specifically for rares and bosses. If you guys did enjoy this one, and only if you did, slap a like, sub to the channel. Once again, if you guys have any questions at any time, drop them in the comment section below. I'm also going to be updating this build and uploading more builds for other classes. I think I'm going to start, kind of testing out other classes as well as I upgrade this build, because there's just so much to do in the game and it's so much fun to play. So, I'm going to be doing all of that at the same time, I guess. As always, guys, stay positive, stay disciplined, and I'll see you all on the next one.